So our keynote presentation on mobile messaging adoption trends is going to be conducted by Richard Hanscott, to whom I'm going to hand over now.
Thanks very much, Liz. It's a very warm welcome from me to Esendex Live. I'm Richard Hanscott, as Liz says, CEO of Esendex, and it's great to see so many of our customers here, and great to see people from across Europe, the UK, Ireland, France, Italy, and Germany. I think, so far, so a truly international feel to this event. So we've been really excited about putting this together, and I hope that you will find some really fascinating content today as we navigate the growth of the messaging world. And to start with, I'm going to talk to some very interesting research that we've completed recently. Now, I'm sure for all of us, every year brings fresh challenges and opportunities, and perhaps 2021 will become a year when we celebrate not just beating the virus, and I certainly hope that we can do that, but we also find genuinely better ways of working. And I suspect that almost every business has had to undergo some form of digital transformation in the last 12 months. And the ones that didn't were either in a very fortunate position, well equipped for what's been happening, or sadly have had to sit out on the sidelines, waiting for our lives to go back to normal. But this afternoon, what I hope we can do collectively, and we've got a great range of speakers at the event today, what I'm hoping we can do is really focus on the positives and understand how changes like the ones we have seen over the last 12 months really drives opportunities, for all of us in whatever business that we happen to be in. And it's certainly been true, and it's very clear for us at Esendex that what we've been seeing from our customers, they're not simply adjustments to ride out the pandemic, but they're strategic shifts in how you engage with customers. Now here are just a few examples of what I mean. So, firstly, appointment management, a sort of classic use case for our messaging services, and we've seen a real uplift in rich appointment journeys, like this example that you can see on screen. And this example enables confirmations and rearrangements of appointments, which has become more important than ever in this very unusual set of circumstances that we've all been working through. And a process like this, a messaging format like this, helps to build confidence with customers, improve safety, as well as reducing waiting times and, frankly, non-attendance, which has become perhaps a bigger issue for many businesses than it has in the past. And we've also seen this kind of technique used to deliver guidance on how to turn up to appointments safely, to wear masks and social distancing, and so on and so forth. So this super capability has not only helped to improve appointment management, but it's also helped to adjust to the current circumstances. And a number of customers have been adding things like post-appointment surveys to build in a closed-loop feedback system to better understand how successful the appointment has been, and interestingly, also to survey customers who missed the appointment altogether to understand what went wrong. And that's actually an area I find particularly interesting, because something like an appointment failure is expensive for a business, and it's potentially also expensive for your customer. So understanding what's gone wrong in the process, what the things that we could do to better get the customer through the door or into the appointment, of course, is extremely valuable. Another really interesting example for me has been click and collect, where we've helped a number of businesses, including a national supermarket chain, to upgrade the customer experience using messaging to improve that critical integration between the online and offline experience, prompting the user to go to store to collect, and also improving the collection process in store to ensure the customer can collect as quickly and effortlessly as possible. Now, I think these will be truly enduring changes. I think, myself, as I've enjoyed the benefit of services like this, I like it. It works well. For me, it helps me to speed through a process and get to the end result, faster than normal. So I think these are the kind of enduring changes that we can take and use across our businesses, for the long term. And having witnessed these and many other examples of change during the last year, I was really curious to understand if these trends were exclusive to the Esendex customers, or whether this was indicative of a broader shift towards mobile messaging. So we've worked with the professional services firm PwC, who've surveyed around 4,400 customer businesses to see how widespread this transformation has been. And I'd like to share some of that data and findings from that research with you this afternoon. And for context, when we're talking about mobile messaging in these slides, we're referring to SMS, but also messaging platforms such as WhatsApp and Apple Business Chat and technologies like RCS. So it's very much a collective term, mobile messaging. And one key takeaway from our survey was that mobile messaging is widely accepted across all business sizes and industries, with 47% of respondents using mobile messaging overall. Now, there are some differences from country to country, as you can see, and there will be, a number of local factors, and I'm not going to go into huge detail, but at one level, it's probably driven by the relative cost price of those services. In countries like the Netherlands and Germany and France, the costs are relatively higher than they are in countries like the UK and Italy, and that's a market level difference. And of course, that makes a difference to the penetration of those services. What we also saw was that using mobile messaging is much more widespread in enterprise-sized companies. They're more advanced in their use of these services than smaller businesses. But importantly, that gap is closing. And to those large businesses that have invested in messaging, the smaller guys are coming up behind you. And our surveys found that 50% of new penetration from businesses intending to use mobile messaging is coming from SMEs. And so although larger businesses have some advantage and have certainly used technology to their advantage, actually smaller businesses are very agile, they're catching up, and they're now increasingly investing in exactly the same kind of techniques. And so everybody's in this race to continue to improve how they use communications and how they use messaging through their various business processes and systems. So this really interesting increasing adoption throughout business. Now, we can see that the number of businesses using messaging is increasing, but at the same time, the range of use cases is also expanding. And we've broken this down in this, we call it a use case wheel. We broke this down into 3 broad categories, each of which then is further broken down into a range of specific use cases. In all, we've identified 10 major use case groupings in this research. And what I'd like to do over the next few minutes is just take a look at each of those categories and understand how the data has shown us what are the most popular use case in each. So let's firstly then turn to the first of those groups, which is marketing. And the most popular use case in that particular grouping are marketing campaigns. And there are a couple of very typical examples on the screen next to me, one of which is a pure SMS campaign used to build site traffic. And I'm sure that's a very familiar campaign that many of you will have used and surely most of us will have seen. And another is an example of an SMS landing page campaign, promoting pizza sales, on Black Friday. And it is interesting, Black Friday for many of us, and certainly for my business, is a peak volume day. And we're seeing growth, as this is very much an international conference, we are seeing more and more countries seeing a wider and wider use of Black Friday and seeing the success of that, across countries that perhaps in the past were not as focused on that as they might have been. So that's interesting. Market research is the second most popular use case, and whether that's a simple net promoter score, to take the temperature of your customer base, as it were, or whether it's a detailed survey to help you understand consumer attitudes to your products and services, market research continues to play a really important part in mobile messaging. It's a really interesting use case. And then finally, under marketing, the third grouping is event-driven marketing. And this is something that's triggered by an activity. And I find this a particularly interesting category because, examples here would be something, for example, like an abandoned cart message or a free trial entering your system. And, I'm seeing more customers that we're talking to are really interested in how they can use this dynamic technique to trigger messaging off the back of in effect, a broken process in your business to re-engage with that customer, to bring them back into your process, and close more sales, do more business, complete more processes. And I think over time, there'll be a stronger trend towards those event-driven activities. So the second of our groups, moving on, is business operations. Now, the top use case here is internal communications, and the example we've shown is staff rostering, which you can see on the left. Now, this is a really, again, quite a simple use of messaging, but it's so powerful, and certainly during this period, and definitely trying to bring the research to connect with the real world around what's been happening to all of us in certain sectors, particularly healthcare, for example, where staff rostering has been under so much pressure to keep staff at the front end. We've seen a tremendous uptick in the use of this technique to fill those empty shifts and make sure that everybody is on hand to deal with the volumes and the changes in business. So lots of businesses realizing how powerful messaging is. When you really need to get through to somebody, it's the number one way of doing so. So I think that's a really interesting example. Hopefully, in the next few months, hopefully we'll be seeing more people using that as a use case to help them go back to business, and build back those businesses that have been slowed or stopped altogether by recent events. So the second category is payments and collections, and there's a great example on screen here of a customer being prompted to deal with an overdue debt and go through a process to consider how they're going to catch up, whether they're going to pay or go through a payments plan, or maybe they just want to reach out and talk to their provider and reach some kind of solution. And certainly, for us, whilst during the pandemic, there's been a lot of need to slow down collection of debt in certain sectors, people unable to pay for obvious reasons. We've all been very mindful of that. Nevertheless, keeping people on payment plans, keeping people making some payment towards debt has proven to be a really key strategy for many businesses, and we've been helping a lot of companies with their debt collection strategies during this period, to make sure that things are still moving forward. We're treating people fairly, we're dealing with government legislation or government opinion in that space, but also, of course, making sure that we're collecting as much of that debt as is appropriate. And mobile messaging is a tremendous, tremendous tool in making sure that we can deliver a really outstanding journey for those people in those circumstances. But actually, given the changes in many customer circumstances, offering those flexible payment plans and ensuring you're available to talk has become, increasingly important. Now, actually, a first call out today, and there are a number I'm going to mention on the way through, but we've got Vanessa Northam here from the debt advice charity Step Change who helps businesses understand how to identify vulnerable customers. So if you have debt recovery and as a use case, it's definitely worth listening to Vanessa, who'll be on stage 3 later on today. Really, really interesting topic. Then there's business process management, and this covers, this is clearly a very wide group. There are lots of things, and I'm sure everybody, every business has, a wide range of processes that they need to manage, whether it's employee onboarding, whether it's expense reporting, job sheets. And actually here on the screen, you can see, just a simple example of a site maintenance solution. And this is really an example of how, companies can use messaging to, drive that access to information on site, collecting information about how successful the maintenance has been, managing those job sheets, making sure you know where your mobile workforce is, what they're doing, really effective kind of solution for many, many businesses. And while there are slightly fewer companies overall messaging customers or staff for this reason than payments, more companies class this as one of their most important reasons for communication. So, this is a really important area for a lot of companies to think about. And then finally, there's the whole identification and verification position, and more important than ever at a time when we have seen an increase in cybercrime, in scammers, in all sorts of sophistications in those areas. And in here you can see a simple example of a chatbot helping to go through an intuitive process for the customer to deliver some verification data. Now, if you're really interested in this kind of process, and a lot of our customers are, then you should have a listen to Dave Attenborough's presentation on stage 4. That's the emerging tech stage, where he'll be talking a lot more about that particular process. So we've covered two of the groups, and now we move on to the third group, which is customer communications. And here, customer support is the top use case. And you can see here an example of a customer, moving into a simple two-way confirmation process to close out hopefully close out that ticket with the customer. And again, this is something we've seen, more and more customers doing over recent times. Then you have customer notifications and reminders as the next use case by popularity. And as an example here on the right is a rich notification experience to support the sale of a replacement boiler using a multi-channel experience. And if you're interested in understanding more about the range of channels you can leverage, and you want a clear steer on what channels to use when, there actually are three incredibly well qualified people here to help you think about that. So we've got Ben Cole from O2, we've got Nick Lane from Mobile Squared, and we've got Martin Hill-Wilson from Brain Food Consulting. And they're all going to be picking up different angles of that particular topic. And I think you'll find all three of those really interesting perspectives on making those choices around channels. And then just completing this third group of customer communications, of course, there's emergency communications alerts, things like getting notified if your servers have gone down or an account's overdrawn, or you've had a power cut in the office. And this is, again, very common mobile messaging service. Now, it's interesting to note that on average, our respondents said that they undertook 5 out of these 10, which is worth thinking about. So, if you're using fewer, are you missing opportunities in your own business to engage with either customers or your staff? And, on that topic, Penny Strutton's talk, which is on stage 3 following this, has some really fascinating content on employee engagement. So well worth listening to that. But what we found most interesting of all was that regardless of the use case, once mobile messaging is established, it becomes the #1 channel across all 10 use cases. It doesn't matter, which use case you think about. And for me, this is perhaps the most powerful, finding in this research. And when you consider what it's replacing here, which is principally email, that's an incredible testament to the power of mobile messaging. And actually, once people understand the power of messaging, how they turn over so much of their communication process to mobile messaging. And I think that's a really exciting new finding. And as the chart shows, it's most successful in customer notifications, emergency communications, and alerts, followed by the 2 marketing use cases, campaigns, and event-driven marketing. Now, on that topic, I'm really pleased today on the marketing stage to welcome 3 incredibly talented people from the world of marketing. We've got Julio Taylor from Hallam, we've got Ben Gary from Impression, and Chris Wilson from Earnest, and welcome to all of you. And they're all here to help you engage with customers more effectively. So head over to stage 2 when the keynote's over, if this is an area of ownership for you or an area of interest. So drilling down specifically into SMS usage, our survey respondents told us that it's SMS's efficiency or effectiveness that make it the channel of choice for so many businesses. And I think that channel of choice phrase is so important here, because from the earlier data, you can see more and more of our customers and more businesses across the piece are turning to messaging to be their channel of choice. Now, I know with this audience, I'm perhaps preaching to the choir, to use an idiom, because this is an audience of people who probably have already embraced this channel in 1 or 2 or maybe more business processes. But SMS is unique in its ability to cut through, regardless of internet connection or mobile device. It's still almost spam-free, and with a 95% open rate, no wonder closing on its 30th birthday, it's still a really successful channel. And SMS usage is predicted to increase over the next 3 years. So again, coming back to the research, what we found was there's a strong uptick in usage forecast. IT and telecoms businesses particularly growing at the top, and projected to grow by 45% in the coming 3 years. Even higher financial services and banking, 46%, retail and wholesale not far behind at 42%. So really exciting plans and exciting growth rates coming from, if not from you, coming from your competitors, coming from your peer group across your industries, these very strong indications that they're going to use messaging increasingly, and the current circumstances have perhaps made them think even more about that. And the reasons provided for this growth were firstly that the ROI delivered via SMS is very high, and perhaps we know that on this call. And secondly, that customer preferences are driving these increased volumes. And I think that's such an interesting and powerful point. Not only is the ROI strong, but your customers actually prefer to use this channel. So you can't often get, a better win-win example than that. So we're seeing this pull demand coming from the public who want the convenience and reliability of texting. But while we're massive fans of SMS here, I did want to pause and reflect on some research from one of our speakers here today, Nick Lane from Mobile Squared. Now, Nick's research indicates that there will be 3 billion rich communication services by the end of 2024, and there are 2 billion active WhatsApp users today. So on this slide, you can see how your messaging journeys might change if you are engaging your customers through these rich messaging channels. All within the messaging experience, you can see images of somebody wanting to buy a trench coat in this case. You can see images, you've got call to action buttons, you've got the ability to make a payment. And you're not having to download an app, you're not having to visit a website. This is all happening within that message channel, which is just getting richer and richer as we go by. So if you're curious to learn more about the power of rich messaging, the emerging technology stage is where you need to be today. So finally, and unavoidably, we want to see how the pandemic has affected messaging trends. And it wasn't especially surprising to find that emergency communications and alerts, came, top of the list. But it was also interesting to see that all 3 marketing use cases in this list. So that really shows how much, how many of I know we've got a number of people from marketing functions online today, how many of your colleagues, and perhaps you as well, have been turning to use this technique to really drive the return on investment and the cut through of marketing. And in fact, we saw some research from HubSpot recently, which showed that interestingly, during the recent times, there's been a 52% increase in email marketing compared to pre-pandemic levels. And this has dramatically decreased the response rates from email by 30%. So with email becoming even more crowded, businesses are definitely looking for mobile messaging to differentiate. Now, it's widely believed that this behavior will become habitual. That trend born of COVID will become the new norm. So the really good news is what we're talking about today, these higher adoption rates, these significant cut-through performance that we're seeing as a result of changes. These are sustainable advantages that you can take back to your business today and commit to delivering real benefits from. So what can you take away from this data? And I just want to make the point that the data was pretty consistent across every country. So whether you've joined us, here in the UK, in Italy, in Ireland, in France, or in Germany, actually these trends are extremely consistent. You, your peer group, your competitors, you're seeing things in the same way, and everybody's racing to find ways of using messaging to make their businesses better. Secondly, I would consider whether you're fully leveraging mobile messaging across every use case that you could, remembering that in every case, it overtakes email when it's established, which, given that email will always be there first, means that mobile messaging, just does a better job. Finally, I've had the opportunity to call out some of today's great speakers, and everyone here is aiming to help you engage with your customers better. So please take the opportunity to hear what experts in their fields have to say, and take this back to your own organization to help your 2021 be even better than last year. I hope that for every one of you, you can take something from this call that will help you to improve your own business process and your own business. So look, it's been a real pleasure sharing some of these insights. The research, I was really pleased with the results, really interested to see how strong the growth has been across country, across use case. And I'm really looking forward, to an even bigger, year ahead as a result of seeing all of this. So thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us today. I really hope you enjoy Esendex Live. It's a pleasure to host you. And I look forward to joining you in enjoying some of the other sessions. So with that, I'll hand back to Liz and she'll tell you what's coming up next. Many thanks.
Thank you so much, Richard. I thought that was really, really thought-provoking content. So hopefully you did too. So next up, you're going to be navigating to the different stages, and Richard was perfectly timed. So the slide on screen now shows, so on slide 2, you've got the marketing stage, truth marketing with Julio. On stage 3, you've got Penny Strutton talking through internal communication and that employee engagement piece. And finally, from Ben on stage 4, about choosing the right channel for the right reason. So please use the menu to head over to the next stage now. If you do have any problems, if you use the question panel in here, I'll stay in here. And I'll see you back on the main stage at 3:45 GMT, and that's 16:45 CET.